don't get that on camera, right? We gotta get this right. The third splash, brother. We're still taking applications, don't worry.
Still plenty of time for splashing there. The Warriors are boogieing down by the bay, while the only thing going down in Cleveland today is LeBron's banner, with the King having departed for Los Angeles. And even that was interrupted by weather, but you know what they say. When it rains, it pours. Belly up for another round of free agent fever here from our Atlanta studio. Matt 3D, GA right there. A couple more reported signings to get to later on. Plus, we'll offer up some absurdly early Western Conference power rankings. First, though, the buzz about Cuz. Let's bring in Marc Spears, who had some fascinating details about how DeMarcus Cousins and the Dubs got together on a one-year deal in his piece for The Undefeated. Marc, appreciate the time as always. You paint a picture of a player disillusioned about the market for his services after receiving no offers on the first day of free agency. How did he get from that moment of clarity to calling the Warriors?
Well, it's certainly a tough free agent market, and you also have the Achilles injury, which either probably made teams hesitant or not interested. But you're also talking about a guy who averaged 25 and 12 and 5. That's Hall of Fame numbers, you know. And so it certainly had to be humbling, put him in an emotional place. And I think he decided, you know what, I'm going to take this into my own hands. I'm going to play 1 year, prove that I'm healthy, get back to being Boogie. And he called the Warriors. Perhaps he may have called some other teams, but he wouldn't go into detail about that. Called the Warriors, which was certainly a surprise phone call for Bob Myers, the GM of the Warriors, and ultimately talked to KD and Steph and Draymond, and decided that, you know, he was going to come to the Bay Area, which is still stunning news for Warriors fans and NBA fans.
An amazing turn of events. You also wrote that Pelicans GM Dell Demps had already informed Cousins that New Orleans wasn't planning to re-sign him. Does that mean at any cost, not even a short-term offer to see if Cuz could get back to form?
Yeah, well, he wouldn't go into detail, or I wouldn't say wouldn't. We didn't go into detail about that. Obviously, you have a certain finite time to talk about things, but he basically said that he did speak to the Pelicans, but no formal offer was made. And so obviously there's probably semantics on what conversations took place in the past and this, that, and the third. But he said that he was told that he wasn't wanted back there.
And Spears, with that being
said, which is a key thing. Like you could talk about contracts and what was offered and this, that, and the other, but he specifically said that he was told that they didn't want him.
And Spears, with that being said, we know he's a talented player. How much of his history had a lot to play in this for the Pelicans?
But here's the thing. I'm going to throw it back at you, 3D. What did he do bad in New Orleans?
Nothing. That's why most of us are so shocked that they didn't offer anything. Because we know the Achilles injury is one thing and may take you a while to get back to form, but is there something you may have found out behind closed doors we don't know why they offered him nothing?
This is the one thing, and my family's from New Orleans, and I know New Orleans inside and out. GW Finn, shout out. Go eat there. But the people there loved him. He did more in 1 year for the community than most guys do in entire careers for the Saints or the Pelicans. He had a comedy show where he raised money for charity days after blowing out his Achilles. He had a Santa Claus event in New Orleans giving gifts to underprivileged kids. So, I mean, he got the community to love him real quick. He played his heart out. They're actually 9-1 in their previous 10 games before when he got hurt. Pelicans were playing good ball, so I'm sure there had to be a lot of hurt feelings because he put monster numbers up for him. There was no issues. I guess if you had to find a knock, technicals, right?
Right, yeah.
And he actually told me he was at a point where him and Coach Gentry, who he got along with and loved, told him, you're not going to win. So he said he was actually trying to start talking to referees more to try to find a common ground. And it wasn't really working, but he was trying. So I really don't what happened in Sacramento happened in Sacramento, but I think getting traded to New Orleans changed him a lot. And there's really nothing big that anybody could say that he did bad in the Pelicans uniform.
Spears, talk a little bit now moving forward. Obviously, the 800-pound gorilla in the room is still going to be the Achilles. And I know that DeMarcus has talked about trying to be ready for camp, but have you had a chance to talk to medical people, whether it be on the staff or what have you, that see a scenario where that is possible, plausible, and would they even want him to try to get back at that point? Or is this a scenario where they're hoping that maybe by All-Star break he can become integrated into that rotation?
Well, in May and yesterday, he was adamant about the fact that he'll be ready for training camp. And I know people probably think that's crazy based on the injury, and I understand that concern. You watch his videos that he is posting. He's running on a treadmill. It's different than running in a basketball game, but he's back on the court doing some things. So he's competitive. He's adamant about being back. But then, once he signs with the Warriors, the big question is, what do the Warriors doctors say? What does Steve Kerr say? What does Bob Myers say? He's going to a place where he doesn't have to rush to get back, where he could be conservative. The Warriors always err on the side of caution of injuries. They won't want him back 100%. They'll want him back 110%. So they'll give him the opportunity and perhaps maybe even tell him, no, you're not playing, and they may have to, because he's such a competitive guy. And I know he's chomping at the bit to compete, to be a part of a winner, to play with the Hampton Five, that I know he'd probably go out there at 80. But we'll see soon what the Warriors think, and ultimately they'll probably have to make a collective decision on when he will play.
Mark, obviously, as a team, you just don't get this opportunity very often where an all-star caliber player calls up and says, hey, I'd like to play for your mid-level. At the same time, there is the injury situation and when he'll come back and the uncertainty of all that. And there are other names out there that perhaps the Warriors would have considered with that mid-level money. Was this an absolute no-brainer for Bob Myers and the Warriors, or did they have to consider who else they might have been able to bring in for the same dough?
Now, if a millionaire walks down the street and sees $100 laying on the ground, does he leave it there?
No, we got extra $100, boss.
Hey, ask them two dudes next to you with all that money. They're going to pick up that 100. And that's what the Warriors did. Bob Myers saw this odd area code from Alabama, picked up the phone, probably had to think twice. He might have had to put him on FaceTime to make sure it was the right guy. I can't wait to hear what Bob Myers had to say. But, hey, you get him for the mid-level, Jesus, that's the greatest mid-level signing in the history of the NBA.
And Spears, real quick, that conversation that Bob Myers had with Steph Curry and Draymond and KD, how much of being around the Olympics and All-Stars, so they could say they know Cousins and Bob, we can bring him in and he's not going to be a deterrent in the locker room?
It's certainly huge. The four All-Stars have spent significant time with him. The one thing that Cuz said that stood out to me is that Steph was ecstatic. He was surprised how ecstatic Steph was that he was coming to the Bay, how happy he was. And that, along with KD, and KD told me the winning culture and the team camaraderie is something that pushed him over. Draymond talked to him while he was in Greece. It's kind of like the Hampton Five thing all over again that convinced KD to come. So were there some other teams involved? Cousins wouldn't say. It's been speculated, but you got the champs, man. You got those cool cats to play with, those talented cats to play with. And this guy has dealt with so much losing. He missed the playoffs. Why not go from one extreme to the other and have a chance to compete with a championship with some fellow future Hall of Famers?
Mark, we were Equally ecstatic to have you on to bring us inside those conversations and take us inside the decision.
See,
for
but you guys
Cousins.
put that ugly picture up of me, and you could have had me like my live handsome face on there, man. You know, I got my boys texting me, ha, and all that.
Yeah. Mark, have your people send us a new picture.
We need a new picture, Spears. We're going to take care of you.
That bio,
Yeah, we need a new picture of you.
I could have set my glamour shot.
Next time we'll get that on. Appreciate it. We'll see you in Las Vegas, okay?
All right, peace.
Marc Spears from the Undefeated with us. It is not very often that a guy 9 years into his NBA career with 4 All-Star appearances under his belt, including a selection just last year, is likely to make his very first playoff appearance. But that's the scenario with DeMarcus Cousins moving forward next spring with a team that is the prohibitive favorite for a 4th championship in 5 years.
Well, I'll go back to my question to Spearsy about something had to go on behind closed doors, GA, because everything he just said, I had heard that all the things he was doing in the community, giving back, and the fans fell in love with him overnight. So I understand the injury is one thing, GA, but not a one-year deal, not something you don't offer him for all the talent, 25 and 12 and 5, just to walk out the door. The injury is one thing again, people, but if the guy had really changed his stripes and doing all the right things, how do you just let that walk out the door for nothing?
David Aldridge reported that after he suffered the injury back in January, at some point during his rehab in the spring, the Pelicans came to him about an extension, and at that point, he and his agent declined. They wanted to test the market moving forward. So there's a little bit of a gray area on there not being an offer. It just wasn't forthcoming when free agency came around.
Yeah, and I had heard that there was a 1-1 offer, but it was a team option on the second year.
Right.
And listen, it's a significant injury. And that's my point about the injury. Listen, there are scenarios where we don't know if he'll still play this season. You know, all the optimism, and you're going to say all that stuff, and he believes it, I'm sure, and hopefully he does play this year, but there's still no guarantee. If you just look at the history of guys who've had that injury, Kobe being the last significant guy that we know of who's had it, albeit he was a little bit older, but I think it took him 8 or 9 months to get back, and he's got a well-renowned work ethic in terms of his passion and commitment to his body. If Boogie is on that path, then, you know, God bless him, and hopefully that does happen. But we still don't know. And so, to me, it's not so much that he signed with Golden State. To your point, he didn't have a lot of takers.
Right.
Even at this number, he didn't have a lot of people that were willing to risk, not just about all the stuff off the court. I think this was more about whether or not he could be an asset on the court this season. And so now he gets the opportunity in an environment where he doesn't have to be as productive to still possibly command a max contract. And think of it this way, too. If you're Golden State, they get an opportunity to have him in-house for a year. When they go into next year, Kevin Durant signed a 1-1. Klay Thompson's a free agent. Draymond will be going into the last year of his deal, and they'll be a year removed from their new arena. So, you know, we don't know how all that's going to play out. I would assume Klay Thompson's going to want a max deal as well. And so this is in a lot of ways also it could be insurance for them moving forward that they can contend if they were to somehow lose a Kevin Durant and or a Klay Thompson after next season.
In terms of the basketball part, even if it all goes as well as it could possibly go, you've got to assume he's not going to put up anywhere near the numbers he did last year in New Orleans because they're not going to require that. Basketball-wise, what does it look like with all this talent on the floor?
Well, they would be really hard to deal with. Him being healthy from an offensive standpoint, you can make the argument he's the best center in the game. He's improved his ability to stretch it. He's a terrific passer, which, you know, oftentimes gets lost. And I think much like we've seen with Kevin Durant and a lot of great players, he will become more efficient and he'll become a better player, you know, because he'll cut down the mistakes. One thing that happens when you're the guy on a team and that team's not as good, you don't tend to trust as much, and you tend to take more bad shots and have more turnovers because you have to do more. Once he fits in that environment, his shot selection is going to improve. I think his turnovers come down. So while his numbers may not be as significant, his value as a player may be even better because he was going to be a better basketball player from being in that environment. And he's got a high IQ. great culture. So in a lot of ways, this is, in his situation, is probably the best thing that could have happened for him, to go to that environment and have a chance to improve on an already very gifted skill set.
From day one, Steve Kerr will challenge him to be to everything Jay just said, to be a better player. So on a day-to-day standpoint, when you're looking at Steph and Clay and Draymond, the way those guys work, there's no question you're going to fall in line and start working as hard. And the way they move the basketball, he's a great passer, like Jay said. I think everything falls into place. In transition, now he's in that spot where Bogut used to be, where Zaza used to be, where, JaVale McGee used to be. Being able to shoot the three and put the ball on the floor,
and post,
it fits into everything they need to do if they want to continue to win.
It's just a ridiculous amount of skill to add for the best team in the world.
How long does it take for him to get healthy?
That's the question.
How long?
And how does he play when he gets back? I mean, we've seen Rudy Gay come back recently.
That's another good one.
Our own Isaiah Thomas had essentially ended his career, the Achilles, so you just don't know.
Then, I'm already old, not for my Achilles, so it doesn't count.
But you already made old. You already had all the money.
You can still grill. Yeah, I can still grill, though. Thank you, Max. Still grill.
That's the important thing. You can still grill.
There we go.
NBA comings and goings. The Nuggets have traded veteran Wilson Chandler to Philadelphia in basically a cost-saving move. They're up against the cap. Less shocking news today from Houston, where the Rockets have reportedly reached a one-year deal with former Rookie of the Year Michael Carter-Williams. MCW played 52 games with the Hornets last season. He's now entering his sixth season in the league, but joining his fifth NBA team. Wow. Meanwhile, the Wizards have added depth to their roster. Our David Aldridge tells us Jeff Green has agreed to a minimum $2.4 million deal to come aboard in D.C. Green was in Cleveland last season, where he played a huge role in the Cavs' road Game 7 win in the Eastern Conference Finals. And recall, this is a homecoming. He played his college ball at Georgetown. Tyreek Evans reportedly has a new NBA home and will head to the Eastern Conference for the first time. Evans has a one-year deal with the Pacers for $12 million. He averaged 19 points a game with Memphis last season. Just getting warmed up here on Free Agent Fever. Some perspective on LeBron's decision to join the Lakers is ahead from a man who told us it would happen weeks ago. Hall of Famer Gary Payton joins us.